All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Insider, with Steve Rennie. We've got Jason Gardner here, a very special guest who I've known for a lot of years and just recently started following again because he retired from the military after 30 years. And I don't know why I'm doing the intro. I'll let you do it. But Jason Gardner. Hey, Jason, why don't you give a quick little, who you are and what you're up to?
Hey, everybody. My name is Jason. I grew up in San Clemente and went to San Clemente High School in Dana Hills, and that's where Steve and I met playing water polo there. Right after high school, I joined the SEAL teams and did a 30-year career in the SEAL teams where, I had several combat deployments and promoted into some leadership levels. And by the way, I really had no interest in leadership, but it was just kind of what I had to do to stay around. And I liked it. So I stayed and learned a lot of the things. And now that I've retired, I retired 2 years ago from the Navy, and I work with for Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. They wrote the book, Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership. And I've spent the last 2 years working with different businesses and different organizations, solving problems through leadership. Because if you have a problem, it's a leadership problem. That's how you solve it. Doesn't matter what it is. They're all leadership problems, and it may be even an aspect of how you're leading yourself. But so that's what I do now, and that's who I am.
Awesome. Hey, and I do remember like we were still in high school and you had just gotten in the military, and it was like the stories we'd hear from Thad, your brother, who was only a year older than me. It was like such huge fans of what you were doing and for our country and just for our local community. Like man, you had an amazing career in the military. So thank you for that.
Awesome. It's a privilege to serve. I was happy I was able to do it.
Yeah. Well, it was fun knowing someone like you who had gone as far in that branch and just SEALs. I mean, what better group to be part of with all the stuff you got to see and do, really. Hey, so dovetailing back into like leadership, and I agree with you, like everything's led, right? And you get teams, aligned with your and where you're going. But are there three things you think you could extract that, are common among great leaders you coach who have success leading their teams where they want to go?
Yeah, I mean, the first one, and this is a huge aspect for just being a good person, is the characteristic of humility. And a lot of people will confuse that humility with meekness, and that's not the case at all. What humility actually is humility is saying to yourself, I can do better, I have room to improve. And so what this protects you from is when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, boss or leader, why are we doing things this way? Humility stops you from saying, because this is the way we've always done it, or because I've said so, which are bad answers, because the organization that's not able to change dies. And we can see this firsthand with COVID, that people were not able to pivot their business and the way they live. They're pretty much have just been rolled over. So humility is a huge aspect to it. And it can be easy as a leader when everyone's looking to you for advice and they're, hey, what do we do, to start to get a little bit of complacency and arrogance can creep in. That's not good for a leader. The next thing that I would say to a leader is, there's a saying that we developed in the SEAL teams, and it's really important. It is relationships equal mission success.
Oh, heck yeah.
You have to develop relationships with people across the board. And to underline that or highlight it, I'll think of this example. If somebody considers you a friend, they're going to put out the extra effort it takes to say yes to your team, as opposed to just stopping you with no. If someone considers you a friend, they're going to take your phone call during their dinner. And so it's imperative that you develop relationships with people across your organization and across the people you work with. Now, as a leader, can you have a relationships with your subordinates? Absolutely. You would absolutely better have relationships with your subordinates, because if you don't, then your ability to communicate with them the why and all these other parts of being a leader is impaired. Where's that line? where's that line between friends with your subordinates? And the line lies at the standard. So if your subordinates are going to try and leverage your relationship to undercut the standard, that's where the line is. And then you can just politely say, hey, no, these are the standards, this is what we're maintaining. And I'll tell you, everyone will respect you for doing it. They're not going to hold it against you as long as you do it from a manner of saying that, hey, I want to make you better. And it's better if we maintain these standards. So that's what we're all going to do. And you say that with a smile on your face, it'll be all good. But these relationships are key because you want to get to the point with your subordinates that they're working hard for you because they don't want to disappoint you, as opposed to, I'm just going to work hard because I don't want to get yelled at or I don't want to get fired. You're not going to get the amount of effort out of your subordinates.
It makes it more than just a job for someone too. When there's a relationship, there's like a mutual reason why you're going to win together.
And when you're doing that too, the resentment factor gets turned off. And so they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you can't always completely explain in a timely manner that needs to be done. What is actually going on. And when folks don't know what's going on, they're going to make up stories about what's going on. And typically they're not good stories. So if you have a relationship with the person or people, they're likely not to come up with stories that are negative. So, and finally, the third thing that I would tell to leaders is, give as much ownership as you can to your team. And so what does that mean? That means that you tell them, hey, here's where your department or team is going. Here's the end state. Here's the result that we need to achieve as a team. And then let them come up with their own plan on how to execute that. And as long as it's legal, ethical, and safe, let them run with their plan. And I'll tell you, even if their plan is by your view as the leader, it's only a 70% solution, you're better off letting them run with their 70% solution than you are with your 100% solution that you think you've got in your mind. And the reason for that is that as they come to obstacles, they're going to problem solve at their level and not just stop because it's their plan. They have their name on it. You'll have so much more energy and drive behind that plan. And we all know this. If something has our names on it and we have ownership over it, we're going to work so much harder. We're going to be inspired. We're going to be fired up. We're going to get things done. So give that to your subordinates. Now, there will be times where you want to maybe coach them a little bit and to help them hey, do things a little bit more efficiently. There may be for instance, may be constraints or difficulties that they run into with permitting or something like that, right? As an example. And ways that you can fix that is saying something like, hey, this plan looks really good, but I noticed that you didn't give yourself any time for the permitting process to go through. How are you going to skin that cat? Instead of just saying, hey, you missed the permitting process, get your ass down to City Hall and get them filed. No, you say, hey, I was kind of looking at this and I was wondering, so you can ask pointed questions that aren't there to just stick your finger in their eye, but to help them on a path. And that maintains them having ownership. And then that gives you that, that momentum and that drive. It's really difficult for leaders to do. It's really difficult. It was really difficult for me as a leader in the SEAL team to do it. And when I read about it in extreme ownership, when I was still on active duty and started putting a lot of these things into using them in my leadership style, and I was seeing them work in real time, and it never failed.
Oh, that's
never
awesome.
failed by giving them ownership. So I think those are the big three, that personal aspect of humility. And then the other thing about developing these relationships across the board. And those relationships, here's how you do it. All you have to do is find something that you have in common with that other person. And that will begin the relationship. And so I don't care who that person is out there in the world. you're going to have one thing in common with them. You're going to have kids the same age, you have the same hobbies, you enjoy the same sports, maybe you watch the same TV program, maybe it's music, maybe it's food, it's something. And so it's these things outside of the workplace that you want to establish common ground, and then that establishes a bond that you have with this person. And now you have the foundation for a relationship, and it's going to smooth all of your interactions out with that person from there on out. And then the final point in there is just make an effort to give your subordinates ownership of whatever they're doing.
No, that totally makes sense. So we're talking about ownership, which is huge. Like, I totally agree with you. I think if somebody comes up with a plan and you help them, if they need help, they'll ask you and you can help them refine it. Relationship, for sure, man. You're in relationship with people, and if you're on a team, you got to do it together. Those are great. Those are great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, in work or on the battlefield in the military, like, everything's a mission. So you have to be able to have all three of those. Hey, if we pivot to the next topic, like as far as overachievers, and I'm sure you saw a lot of people stand out in the military, SEAL in particular. I mean, it's all overachievers, but are there certain qualities you find, that you've seen in the business world that kind of relate to how people overachieved in the military that you were with?
Sure. There are some folks that just have an incredible amount of drive. And so they're just driven, and they're able to get themselves moving in the right direction and all that. Now, the next thing that I've seen from the very successful people that are high level achievers is that they're able to maintain some kind of balance. Because the folks that are over focused on work all the time, that's not sustainable. It's not resilient. It doesn't last. And so when they're out of balance, eventually it comes back to perform their performance at work. And so folks have got to find a good sense of balance on how they're going to take care of themselves for personal health, and make sure they're making time for their family. Because if they're not making time for their family and they're at work all day, guess what's going to start to fall apart? That's the home. And then that's going to cause a lot of friction points that are going to come into their life. Maybe they're super fired up and they're not sleeping well. Okay, it's going to affect your health. It's going to hurt you in the long run. And it's difficult. You have to be very, very disciplined. And it sounds like a funny thing to be disciplined about, like actually taking a break and maybe, enjoying a hobby like going surfing or something, or just exercise, because it can get just pushed out of your day. But then when it does get pushed out of your day, your health suffers. Now your performance is suffering. And then the next thing is the next quality, again, because it just can't be talked about enough, is humility. Is that saying to yourself, I always have room to improve. I'm able to check my ego and listening to an opposing view and find, well, okay, that person disagrees with me, but where's the merit in their argument? Because there has to be some kind of merit. And maybe there's a different way that I can look at doing things and open up the perspective. And then that will help you pop out of that box and can continue to evolve as a person and as a business leader and all that.
I think that's so cool. And my favorite part is how everything translates. The humility piece and just being, a lifelong learner, regardless of what you're doing, relationship, balance in work and life. Jason, it's so cool to be able to talk to you about this stuff. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of crazy stuff in your life. And it started in a pool deck with all of us in Speedo swimming around at Dana Hills with trying to beat the other team. But I appreciate you taking time out and sharing that. Hopefully everybody who's listening to this is also getting out of it. There's some simple, fundamental things that make us human beings and how we lead and how we interact. And also on the flip side for teams, just, people who are driven and ambitious and definitely have that balance are going to be able to do it for a longer period of time. Outside of all this stuff, what are you up to outside of work these days? I know, follow you on Facebook. It seems like you do some fun stuff. What can you share? Would you be open to sharing that you like doing when you're not coaching or kind of helping people be better?
Yeah. So when I retired from the Navy, we moved up to a real rural area in northeastern Washington. And essentially we have kind of like a homesteading thing going on up here. We try to grow as much of our own food. We do a lot of foraging and gathering wild food, and we've got horses that we ride. And so, I post that on Facebook and then on my Instagram at jason.n.gardner, or, my wife and I just talk about our adventures and all the things we've got raising our kids up here in the wilds of northeastern Washington.
That is so cool. Well, it probably reminds you of growing up in San Clemente, right? Horses and wildlife, foraging. I don't even know why you left. It's the same place.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate it. First of all, it's awesome to see you after all these years. And like I said, I'm a huge fan, massively appreciative of your service and everything you've done for our country. And appreciate you taking time out to wrap out with me too.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. I'll hit you up next time I'm in town.
All right, cool. I'll make sure all your contacts and info is on here for your Instagram and anything else you want. So
awesome.
Thanks, bud.